Okay, this video is for anybody who's ever watched one of my other videos and went, what is he talking about? What did he say? What does that mean? What's a glowy? What's a blinker? Look, I end up using a lot of stoner terminology in my videos. Sometimes it's just what I say. It's just what I call it. Sometimes I'm using certain keywords to try to get around restrictions from robots and stuff because look, they scan everything you show and say in your videos and then they start dinging you for it. So look, if you want to find my best content, my most uncensored, undinged content, come check out my Twitch stream. I do a smoke sesh every night at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's free. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can support me for free. Hop on over there to find out how. But this video has been requested directly many times. Could I make a video on terms and all the things that I say in my videos? But also indirectly, it has been requested so many times because I can find tons of comments going, what does this mean? What were you talking about here? I don't know what this means. So look, I understand that this video is going to be a little disorganized. So if you want to get the most information, just watch the whole thing. And look, if I missed any terms, if I missed something that you're used to hearing or you're not sure what something means, leave a comment and let me know. Maybe somebody else will answer it. But also just take every bit of terminology with a grain of salt because some of these terms mean more than one thing, or sometimes the term just means a completely different thing depending on which stoner group you're talking to. So let's start right off with different terms that people use for taking a hit. So the common ones are taking a hit, taking a toke, taking a rip is probably one that I use a lot. One of my favorite ones I heard recently, and I mostly use it just to laugh at it, but taking a tug. Sometimes when you pull on your piece, that's another term, taking a pull. You give it a nice tug, right? Bong tugs, anyone? Now, there's other terms that describe types of hits. If you're taking a snapper, you're taking a hit that's gonna burn your entire bowl into ash and then snap that into the water. Let's ignore the fact that most people doing snappers are wasting green flour and they snapped it before it burned. But also, that's called different things depending on where you are in the world. Some people call taking a snapper or a snap sinking a cone, which is a term for a bowl, right? Some people call their bowls cones. It's common in other countries. In the EU and Australia, a lot of places are calling it cones. And some bowls are cone-shaped. But punching a cone, sinking your bowl, these usually mean smoke the whole bowl and pull the ash into your water. Now, there's other terms I use a lot. Glowy, which is a very common one. It's used for concentrates. It refers to getting your titanium nailed. Typically, it works with quartz, but you heat it up so much that it gets red hot and it glows. You put your dab on there, you did a glowy. But that's not really how you're supposed to dab, but 10 years ago or so, everybody's doing glowies. Now, blinker is another term. I think it's like a glowy on the goey. It's like a glowy on your pen. Blinker just means you hit your vape pen all the way until the battery auto shuts itself off. And it usually blinks. Some pens will let you go 8 to 10 seconds. I hear they're coming out with more that go longer, but typically the technology used to make the cartridge is so bad that you don't want to push it to its limit and do blinkers. But I do have to say, a lot of people just use blinker as a catch-all term for any cart hit. Anytime they hit a cart, they call it doing a blinker, even if they didn't do a blinker. Other terms for taking a rip, taking a puff. There's a lot of different things that you can call a hit or a different type of hit. But what do you call it? I like taking tugs. It's the funniest one. And you want to tug a bong with me? Now, let's get into some flower terms here. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit disorganized. If I miss some stuff, maybe we'll just make a part 2 out of all of the terms that I missed. But what do you call flower? Do you call it weed? Do you call it bud? Do you call it ganja? Do you call it herb? Do you call it grass? Do you call it that sticky icky? You call it dope? You watch Trailer Park Boys? They started filming that a while ago. They're calling it smoking dope. I like smoking dope. But there's other terms that I've heard throughout the years. I think people are calling stuff Zaza now, stemming from the term exotic. I used to hate on Zaza, but it's really funny to me now. I like to say it Zaza with like W's in there, like how an old man might say. I'm smoking that Zaza. Or you watch a little Dracula flow, top shelf Zaza disrupted my circadian rhythm. Look, it's become kind of a meme to me, and I'm mostly saying it sarcastically, but I want to take some big tugs of some Zaza. But years ago, there was terms for higher quality and lower quality. I think before I was shopping at the store and they would just use top shelf, middle shelf, bottom shelf, whatever. That was different things. You would either get mids or chronic. When I first started smoking, you were either getting chronic, it was good, or you were getting mids and it was not good. And mids is a term for like lower quality flower. But I have to say, like, the new age of calling something mids is calling it mid, which is one letter less, same amount of syllables. I get it, mid shelf, mid tier. It makes sense, but bro, it's mids. Stop smoking mids. Or start smoking mids if you're spending too much money on that chronic. But when I started smoking, they'd call the good stuff chronic, or they would call it dro. Usually was a term for higher quality stuff, which stems from hydroponically grown flower. Not all dro was actually grown with hydroponics. It was just a term for good stuff, which I gotta say, again, a lot of these terms, they get commandeered or they get used for something that it doesn't actually describe. Sometimes the terms have 10 meanings, or sometimes 10 different terms mean the same thing. But the regs or Reggie, Reggie was even worse than mids. I never even considered Reggie. Reggie, to me, when I started smoking, was weed you didn't smoke. Okay, I'll get chronic or mids, but I'm not getting Reggie. I don't need to meet Reginald today. Regs, Reggie. I hear a lot from older stoners. They use the term regs a lot. And some people have described to me that regs was the term before they used mids. But again, like I said, none of these terms are rock solid. They don't have a Webster definition. There's no super definitive definition on some of these. And somebody's probably watching this video going, none of these terms mean any of what this guy's saying. But a lot of different terms for flower, and that's what I call it now. If it's in flower form, I just call it flower. But when I was first starting to use the term flower to describe it, when I had the options between flower and concentrates and topicals and edibles, people would cringe. Oh, you're calling it flower, bro? You're calling it flowers? It's literally flowers, bro. Now, let's hop on over to some concentrate terms or dab terms. I say dab a lot. It can refer to the act of consuming your concentrate, but it can also refer to your concentrate. I've got some dabs. I'm ready to dab. Now, dabs is the term that I use most, but some people call them extracts or concentrates, or they'll call it rosin or resin, depending on what they've got. Call it by the consistency, which the consistencies, I've mentioned this before, they're not rock solid like these definitions are. Not every time you get one consistency is it exactly like every other thing that's considered that consistency. I think shatter is a great example. There's tons of different kinds of shatter. Oh, this one's glass. Oh, this one's sap. Oh, this one's pull and snap. So for dab terms, concentrate terms, one of the OG ones is oil, referring to a cannabis oil extract, which is why 710 is a thing. If you capitalize O-I-L and then you flip it over like this, it looks like a 710. 710 means oil. You probably see that a lot. And look, don't forget the edible holiday I invented, 8-1, August 1st, the day everybody ate one. I think that one plays out better than 710 because look, you take the 710 and you flip it and it's oil. Bro, 8-1's just way easier. That's a new term. I'm adding that on this list, but we'll bring it up again for edibles. But I call large dabs globs. If you're doing a dab that's not your typical size, you're doing a glob. I think most people, if you're dabbing, you should be dabbing and not globbing. But globs for me, like anything over like a quarter gram, look, you don't need that much for one hit. You might, but you don't. And I've had fun with globs. I say things like Globbert De Niro if it's a really big glob, or look, Globbert Downey Jr., it's a glob, but it's not a monster glob, right? He's got the junior in there. If it's a nice smooth glob, you got a Glob Thomas featuring Santiva. I'm just saying words. Now, another term I use for large quantities of concentrate is slabs. When the shatter was all the rage years ago, you would just find endless slab shots. I miss slab shots, right? Looking at a jar of rosin is cool, but like looking at a big old slab, I think it's cooler. The art is really there. But slabs are just giant sheets of concentrate, essentially. But some people will call a big dab or a big glob a slab. And something I used to say all the time is, oh, bro, I'm ready to get slabbergasted. Because it's like the word flabbergasted, but I said slab in the front of it. Anyway. Now, there's other things that we can talk about. Terps, which a lot of people just started calling dabs terps. Oh, I need the terps or whatever, which is talking about the smell and the flavor of it, essentially. Now, there's a term for all the consistencies out there, but also it can come down to a live extract versus a cured extract. Live extracts usually have a higher amount of terpenes in it, live resin, live rosin. They usually chop the plant and freeze it when it's still alive and do the extraction then, versus a cured extract where they chop it and they dry the plant plant out and they cure it, which can develop the terpenes over time. You can get a more complex profile that way. But live versus cured are just two different types of extracts. And then you'll also hear rosin and resin, I've already mentioned, which is another difference in the type of extractions. If you have something that's a rosin, it's made without solvent. It's typically made from hash, but they can make it from flour using heat and pressure, and they just basically squeeze the good juice out of the plant. So if you're hearing something called rosin, whether it's a live rosin or a cured rosin, it's going to be made without a solvent using heat and pressure. Now, if you hear something called resin, that will mean it's an extract typically made with a hydrocarbon, butane extraction, propane extraction. But you'll also hear people call like the stuff that builds up in their pipe resin, right? When you smoke and you have a bunch of smoke passing over areas, it'll recondense into a solid, and it's like a darker, can look like ink, like black sticky stuff. That's resin, that's pipe resin. That's going to be much different than a cured resin or a live resin extract. But resin means it's just an extract made with a hydrocarbon typically. Now there's other ways to extract. They can do alcohol extractions, ethanol extractions. You can get CO2 oil. You'll also hear distillate, which is usually just distilled THC. It's usually the most processed form of an extract. Oftentimes they can take something that doesn't look like you'd smoke it and turn it into something that you would actually smoke through the distillation process. But that's what fills up your carts. That's what they make most edibles out of. And if you're buying dabs to actually put on a nail or something, you want to avoid distillate and go for your rosins and resins. Go for your cured extracts, your live extracts. Don't get the distillate. That's for filling pens and making cheap edibles. Now there's other terms for consistencies. I actually have a tier list on consistencies, but some of them just describe how they handle or how they look. You'll have something like butter, which handles like butter or peanut butter. Sometimes it's a little bit thicker, sometimes it's not as thick. Like I said, these consistencies can vary, but shatter is usually like a clear extract that'll shatter and break apart. Crumble is like a drier butter that is really crumbly. It's not as goopy as some of the other ones, and it might end up being a little bit drier. I think the drier concentrates, especially the waxes, can just spread inside your container and get hard to use. Wax is another term. I kind of use wax as a catch-all term for any concentrate, any extract. Could be a wax in my head. But for some people, it's a term for a specific consistency. But like I said, I've seen wax on butters. I've seen wax on crumbles. Now, there's different ways to consume dabs. You're usually putting your dab on a nail, which kind of refers to the OG design of what you would consume your concentrate with. It literally was a titanium nail with a glass dome around it. So a lot of people just call anything that they put their dab on a nail. But if you look back in the day, dab nails used to look like nails. They made them out of glass. They made them out of quartz. You would just have something nail shaped that would fit in a male joint and have a little bit of room for air to pass through. And then you just put a dome over it so your vapor didn't escape. But I see people calling slurpers and bangers nails, and E-rig atomizers get called nails sometimes. An e-nail is an electronic nail or an electronically heated nail. Usually you'll see one with a cord running to it. I got a cordless e-nail in my dab ready. E-rig is an electronic dab rig or a portable e-nail. I thought they were going to be called portable e-nails for a while, but e-rig just makes more sense. Electronic rig. Now, another thing that people get confused on is amounts. It's wild because a lot of the legal shops just use the same units of measurement as like they did on the streets. They use the same units of measurement as your plug from years ago. So the most common transaction or the most common amount of flour that people get is an eighth. And an eighth is an eighth of an ounce or 3.5 grams. And an ounce is kind of funny because they round it down to 28 grams. But if you look up an ounce, it's actually, it's 28.3495 grams. But even when I worked in like medical shops, they would round down to 28 grams. You don't get the 28.3495. But an eighth, I hear a lot of people call it a 3.5, which is just 3.5 grams. That's an eighth of an ounce. You can get a quarter of an ounce, which is 2/8 or 7 grams. A half, which is 14 grams or 4/8 if you're good at fractions. Now, an ounce has a lot of terms. They used to call them zips when I was first getting into smoking because it would come in a Ziploc bag and it usually filled the whole bag. But there's a lot of terms for an ounce. You call it an O, you call it an onion. I remember people would always try to be so like clever. Oh, hey, look, I need an onion, bro. And it's like, what if the cops are going to read your text messages? They're not going to think that you need an ounce. They're going to think that you need an onion. You're texting a guy at 3 a.m. for an onion. Oh yeah, super believable. Yeah, bro, this recipe, I'm making some chili. It calls for 1 onion and all the grocery stores are closed. Shout out to all the people that were texting their plug at 3 in the morning for an onion. Maybe they were getting a lot. Maybe they needed an elbow, which is a whole pound, right? An LB is the abbreviation for a pound. LB, elbow. I see how they got there. A QP, a quarter pound. I've had people call them quaps before. I thought that sounded weird. QP is a good one. Although, look, QP is how some people shorten or give me a nickname to my nickname, Cewpins. They go, hey, what's up, QP? And it's like, I am a quarter pound. All right, so if I missed any, leave me some comments. But let's talk about glass terms, because there's a lot of glass terms. People aren't really familiar with every different type of piece because they don't have a dang old store behind them like I do. But the bong just means anything with water percolation and a removable bowl usually. Bubbler means that it has water percolation, but it might not have a removable bowl. It's like a pipe where they just made the bottom of the pipe lower or longer so they could put some water in it. But in my head, if you can remove the bowl, it's a bong. But there are some pieces that are shaped exactly like a bubbler, but then it also has a removable bowl. We can call them bold bubblers. Pipe, there's a lot of kinds of pipes out there. Spoon pipe is your standard one. It's kind of spoon shaped. You're going to put the weed in the top of the concave part of the spoon. There's other pipes out there. Steamroller, which is the longer pipe. It's got a big hole on the end. Usually those you can kind of fill up the piece like you would on a bong. They're usually a little bit larger, bongs are. A steamroller is like designed for you to be able to fill up the smoke in the glass chamber before clearing it. Where most pipes that you're using are on the smaller side, so that smoke is just going directly into your lungs. There's other small pipes out there like a one hitter, which is exactly like it sounds, enough for one hit. And there's other things like a chillum, which is another dry pipe, can be a one hitter, but usually you just do a different style of hit. People are hitting chillums through their hand. That's not one that you're going to put your lips on directly, although you can and use it like a one hitter. But chillums are designed to interact with your hand. You can hold them in weird ways. I don't know. I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but I've had plenty of fun smoking out of chillums. Rig, if you hear the term rig, it usually just refers to any glass piece for concentrate. Rig is the dabbing piece term. You'll separate your bongs from your rigs, and they could be the same shape, but if you use one for dabbing, that's your rig. So I only have a few terms for edibles. I think some people can pick up on them pretty quick. If you hear somebody say that brownies are special, you'll know exactly why those brownies are special. Or if somebody says they have magic brownies, you're gonna know a little bit about the magic. You don't think that it went to Hogwarts, right? But look, ate one. I had to bring it back. Look, you ate one, right? Look, everybody ate one, right? Don't forget to celebrate the edible holiday that I created every August 1st. You ate one, right? Sometimes people just call the edible term what it is. If it's gummies, right? Nobody's asking about gummies. Nobody's texting me, hey, can you get some gummies? Talking about Mott's, talking about Welch's. If you're talking about gummies, you're talking about gummies. Eddies is probably the big slang term for edibles. You just abbreviate it, right? EDIS instead of saying edibles. Look, a lot of the auto mod picks up on you saying edible. I feel bad for the company Edible Arrangement because look, they're not even selling you infused stuff. They're probably getting dinged because they call it edible. All right, now let's round this out with different terms for being high. What's your favorite term for when you're high? I like to say lit. I like to get lit. It's one syllable. It's easy to spell. But also baked. You ever get high? You ever get really, really high? Well, maybe you got baked. You ever get high in the morning? You did a wake and bake. You wake up and you get baked. Blazed is another one I say, although that one's a little bit on the way out. People aren't saying you want to blaze as much anymore. I think I'm mostly saying it like sarcastically, but I'm still serious because look, I want to blaze. But not as many people are saying they're blazed as much anymore. I don't hear it. HAF, high as Funky Town. That one I don't hear as much anymore, but some people are just like, I'm HAF. And look, it's an acronym. Spell it out. Stoned is a really common one you hear. We're stoners, we get stoned. Although in my head, I think stoned is a specific kind of high where you're slower, you're more relaxed. I feel like the difference between being lit and stoned is there, but I might just say either one for either situation. Some people just say they're gone. Some people just say they're in outer space. Some people are aliens. Now here's some bonus terms I hear on TikTok that people use to get around the auto mod moderation, but people have been calling smoking gardening lately. Yeah, bro, I was in my garden relaxing, doing some gardening. It's weird, right? It's weird, but like, do it works. They call anything concentrate related to beekeeping. This is my jar of honey. I'm gonna do some beekeeping. There's some wild terms that I've been hearing lately. Look, you gotta mow your silly grass sometimes. Like, you gotta launch into orbit. I don't know. A lot of this stuff ends up being silly terms. And honestly, if I watch this video in like a few years, I'll be like, I don't say none of those anymore. I don't say any of that. No, I call it this now. No, I call it this now. No, everybody's saying this now. The terms change constantly. And like I said, they don't always mean the same thing to different people. But look, if I missed any terms or if I got any terms wrong, leave me a comment, let me know. Maybe I'll make a part 2 and include all of the terms that I missed. But either way, come get high with me on Twitch. I'm probably blazing right now. Where are you at?